Imagine you're dropped in the middle of a strange land. No phone, no map, no little blue dot telling you where you are. The sun is setting, you don't know which way is home, and getting it wrong could cost you your life. For almost all of human history, this wasn't a nightmare, it was just Tuesday. So how on earth did people find their way across entire oceans and continents with no GPS at all? For thousands of years, there were no maps worth the name, and not even a compass. To find your way, you had to read the only map there was, the world itself. On land, people memorized the shape of everything. The mountains, the rivers, a strangely bent tree. They followed the sun, which always rises in the east and sets in the west, and at night they looked up. Because the sky is the oldest map of all. In the northern half of the world, one star barely moves, the North Star. Find it and you have found north. Every sailor, every traveller leaned on that single point of light. Some cultures went further. Aboriginal Australians created songlines, epic songs that sung in order described every landmark, waterhole and turn across thousands of miles of desert. The directions weren't on paper, they were in the music. Then, around 1,000 years ago, came a tiny miracle from China. A sliver of magnetized iron that always, stubbornly, pointed north, the compass. And when it reached the open ocean, everything changed. Now a captain could hold a heading, even in thick fog, even out of sight of any land. But the compass only told you which way you were pointing. It couldn't tell you where you actually were. So sailors invented a clever, nerve-wracking guessing game called Dead Reckoning. You take your starting point, your compass heading, your speed, and the time you've traveled, and from that, you estimate your new position. But how do you measure your speed in the middle of an ocean with a rope? They'd throw a knotted rope off the back of the ship and count how many knots slipped through their hands in a set time. And that is why, to this day, we measure a ship's speed in knots. Dead Reckoning was a brilliant guess, but it was still a guess. Errors stacked up day after day until a ship could be hundreds of miles from where the captain swore it was. To do better, they turned back to the sky. By measuring the exact angle of the North Star, or the midday sun above the horizon, with a tool called a sextant, a navigator could work out his latitude, how far north or south he was. But that only solved half the puzzle. Latitude tells you your line, north to south. It cannot tell you how far east or west you are, and that missing piece, longitude, became the deadliest problem in the history of travel. Without longitude, ships smashed into coastlines they thought were still days away. Entire fleets were lost. Thousands of sailors drowned simply because nobody could reliably answer the question, how far east have we come? The answer, in the end, was time. A man named John Harrison spent decades building a clock so perfect it could keep the exact time of your home port, even on a heaving ship at sea. Compare that to the local time where you stood, and the difference reveals your longitude. One genius clock, and the oceans were finally tamed. But here's the twist. While Europe was struggling for centuries to solve this with brass instruments and perfect clocks, the greatest navigators who ever lived were already crossing the largest ocean on Earth, using none of it, the Polynesians. With no compass, no sextant, no clock, no maps at all, they sailed thousands of miles across the open Pacific and found tiny islands like specks of dust in a vast blue emptiness. Across an ocean so vast, it could swallow every continent on Earth and still have room to spare. How? They read the ocean itself. They memorized a star compass, the precise points where dozens of stars rise and set. They watch the flight paths of seabirds at dusk, knowing they fly home to land. They read the shapes of distant clouds and the color of the water, and most astonishing of all, they felt the swells. A master navigator could lie down in the hull of his canoe and read the rhythm of the waves through his own body, detecting the faint echo of an island bouncing back across the sea long before he could ever see it. That was navigation as an art, a skill passed down for generations, holding entire civilizations together across the water. And then, in a single generation, all of it changed. radio signals, then satellites, a ring of machines placed in orbit, beaming down your exact position anywhere on Earth to a device in your pocket. A skill that took our species 200,000 years to master, replaced by a glowing blue dot, from the stars to a compass to a clock to a machine in the sky. In a single human lifetime, all of it changed. But here's the part worth thinking about. The next time you follow that arrow without a second thought. We didn't just gain a tool, we let go of something ancient. Scientists have found that the part of your brain that builds maps, the hippocampus, physically grows in people who navigate the hard way and quietly shrinks in those who only ever follow the screen. We are slowly handing our sense of direction over to the satellites. So the next time your phone says, "Turn left," just remember, your ancestors read the entire sky, the open ocean, and the living earth to find their way home. They carried the map inside them. And not so long ago, so did you. There's a brand new journey into the before times every single week. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the past.